The sun was rising on the horizon, bathing Maplewood Park with its golden rays. The municipal park, the green heart of the city, was beginning to awaken for another day. The treetops swayed gently with the morning breeze, while the first visitors arrived for their routine walks. Amidst the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves, there was a silent contrast, almost imperceptible to those who didn't look closely. Tied to a sturdy trunk of a century-old mango tree, Max waited. His golden fur, characteristic of the Labrador breed, had lost its shine after days without proper care. His amber eyes, deep as honey wells, reflected a mix of emotions that only sensitive souls could understand: fear, hope, resignation, and an almost imperceptible spark of faith. The rough rope around his neck left red marks on his skin, a silent testament to the abandonment he had suffered. Max was not just any dog. Born in a litter of 8 puppies, he had always been the shyest, the least exuberant when potential buyers visited the kennel. While his siblings jumped and barked to attract attention, Max watched cautiously, preferring to hide rather than be exposed. For the breeder, who cared only about the profit of his business, a shy dog meant a loss. And so, on a Sunday morning, Max was taken to the park and tied to that tree, discarded like a worthless object. 2 nights and an entire day had passed. The water in the small bowl left beside him had been gone hours ago. The food dried up. Crumbs no longer existed. Max, by his resilient nature, did not bark desperately as other dogs would. He waited, observed, and in his eyes was a silent wisdom that few would notice. As morning progressed, the park came to life. Elderly people practiced Tai Chi in slow, precise movements. Runners passed by at a steady pace, headphones isolating them from the natural symphony around. Children laughed and yelled at the nearby playground, unaware of the silent drama unfolding under the shade of the mango tree. Some people passed by Max, glanced quickly, and continued on their way, assuming the owner would be nearby, or worse, choosing not to get involved. Max felt the weight of passing gazes. Each time someone approached, his eyes lifted with a spark of hope, only to lower again when the person moved on. His pink tongue hung slightly out, seeking moisture in the increasingly warm air. But even in his silent suffering, there was something different about Max. His eyes did not fixate only on the people passing by. From time to time, his gaze would stray to a specific point behind the tree, as if something there captivated his attention irresistibly. It was at that moment that Emma appeared on Max's horizon. A 13-year-old girl, brown hair tied in a messy braid and freckles dancing over her nose when she smiled. Emma was not like other children. From a young age, she carried an extraordinary sensitivity towards animals. "It's as if she could hear what they don't say," her mother remarked, both proud and intrigued. Emma came to the park that morning accompanied by 3 friends, Peter, Mary, and Jack. They had planned a picnic, taking advantage of the municipal holiday. Emma carried a basket with fruits and sandwiches. Mary brought a bucket with water and disposable cups. Peter took care of the juices. And Jack, always cautious, carried a large towel enough for everyone. It was Emma who first noticed Max. The group passed near the mango tree when the girl stopped abruptly, as if struck by an invisible force. Her eyes met the dog's, and something indescribable passed between them, a silent communication that transcended words. "Look," she whispered to her friends, pointing to Max. "He's tied up, and he seems to have been here for a long time." The other 3 approached cautiously. Max, seeing the group of young people approaching, tried to stand up, but his hind legs wavered. Still, his tail attempted a timid wag, a hopeful greeting. "He's dehydrated," observed Emma, kneeling at a safe distance, not out of fear of the animal but out of respect for his space. "Mary, pass me the bucket, please." Mary hesitated. "What if the owner shows up? He might not like us messing with his dog." Peter agreed. "Maybe he just left the dog here for a few minutes while he went to get something." Emma looked again at Max, at the worn rope around his neck, at the obvious signs of dehydration in his deep eyes. "No one leaves a dog like this for a few minutes. He's abandoned, I'm sure." Jack, always the most cautious, suggested, "What if we call animal control? They would know what to do." But Emma had already made her decision. She took the bucket from Mary's hands and slowly approached Max. "Hey, buddy," she spoke softly, her voice a soothing melody. "It's okay. I'm here to help." Max watched Emma, with eyes that had seen more sadness than they should. When she offered water in her cupped hands, he first sniffed cautiously before beginning to drink desperately. Emma smiled, a lone tear rolling down her cheek. "See?" she said to her friends, who watched the scene with a mix of concern and admiration. He was dying of thirst. As Max drank, Emma noticed something curious. Even in his debilitated state, the dog occasionally glanced at something behind her. Emma tried to follow the direction, but saw nothing beyond bushes and a small section of the picnic area. "What are you looking at, buddy?" she asked gently, more to herself than expecting a response. After Max quenched his initial thirst, Emma opened her picnic basket and offered a piece of her cheese sandwich. The dog accepted the food with surprising delicacy, as if, even in his hunger, he did not want to scare his new friend. "We need to let him go," Emma finally said, looking at the tight knot that bound Max to the tree. "We can't just unleash a dog in the park," Peter argued. "There are rules, Emma. What if he's dangerous?" Emma laughed, a clear sound that made Max's ears perk up. "Dangerous? Look at him. The only dangerous thing here is the idea of leaving him tied up any longer." Mary, who had been silently observing everything, stepped forward. "Emma is right. We can't leave him like this, but we also can't just release him to wander the park." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "What if we take him to the veterinary clinic downtown? My aunt works there. She would know what to do." While the friends discussed Max's fate, Emma remained kneeling beside him, gently stroking his head. The dog pressed his muzzle against her knee, as if silently thanking her for the attention and affection. Then Emma noticed again. Max was staring intently at something beyond her. This time her curiosity prevailed. "What are you seeing, Max?" she asked, giving him a name instinctively. Emma turned slowly, following the direction of the dog's gaze. At first she saw nothing unusual, just bushes swaying with the breeze and the picnic area in the background. But then, with an almost imperceptible movement, the bushes moved differently, not by the breeze, but by something moving among them. "Guys," Emma called her friends, her voice low and excited. "Come see this." The group approached cautiously, following Emma and Max's fixed gaze. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, as if responding to a silent call, a small brown head emerged from the leaves. A squirrel with bright black eyes and alert ears. "A squirrel," Mary whispered, trying not to scare the small animal. Before anyone could respond, a second head appeared, and then a third. An entire family of squirrels emerged from the bushes, moving agilely across the park grounds. "Is that what you were looking at all this time?" Emma asked Max, who now kept his gaze fixed on the small rodents, his tail wagging more energetically. The squirrels, apparently accustomed to human presence in the park, showed no fear. On the contrary, they began a curious dance, chasing each other, climbing up and down nearby trunks, collecting and hiding small seeds. It was an unexpected spectacle. The four friends and the tied dog watched, enchanted as the squirrels played. The previous tension dissipated like morning fog under the sun, replaced by a sense of wonder. "Look how they dance," exclaimed Emma, her face lit up with a wide smile. "It looks like they're performing for us." Indeed, the squirrels seemed to be putting on an elaborate performance. They swiftly climbed trunks, jumped between branches with impressive precision, and occasionally stopped to watch their spectators, like performers gauging the audience's reaction. The most surprising, however, was Max's reaction. The dog, who, minutes before, could barely stand, now watched the squirrels with complete attention. His eyes followed every movement of the small animals, and for a moment, all his pain and abandonment seemed forgotten. Emma noticed the change in Max. The shine had returned to his eyes, previously dull with sadness. It was as if the squirrels had brought back something that abandonment had stolen, the ability to marvel, to find beauty even amid suffering. "Are you seeing this?" Emma whispered to her friends. "He's happy." Peter, who had previously argued against unleashing the dog, now observed Max with different eyes. "He doesn't look dangerous," he admitted. "Actually, he seems pretty gentle." "Everyone deserves moments of happiness," Emma said, her voice soft but determined, "even when they're stuck. Especially when they're stuck." As they watched the natural spectacle, an idea began to form in Emma's mind, a certainty that grew with each moment. She looked at Max, the squirrels, her friends, and knew what needed to be done. "We're going to let him go," she said. Not as a suggestion, but as a decision already made. This time, no one argued. There was something in Emma's conviction, in the visible connection between her and Max, that silenced any objections. Jack, always practical, examined the knot that bound Max. "It's pretty tight," he informed. "I'll need the knife my dad gave me for my birthday." While Jack worked on the knot, the squirrels continued their performance, as if they understood what was happening and wanted to keep Max distracted. The dog watched the scene with a mix of fascination and anticipation, as if sensing that an important change was about to happen in his life. "Almost there," Jack murmured, focused on his task. Emma petted Max, speaking softly into his ear. "It's going to be okay now, buddy. I promise I won't let anyone abandon you again." With a final effort, Jack cut the rope. Max, feeling the sudden freedom, did not run away as many dogs would. Instead, he looked at Emma as if asking for permission or guidance. "You're free, Max," she said, smiling through the tears now freely running down her face. The dog took a few hesitant steps, testing his weakened legs. Then, in a gesture that moved everyone, he returned to Emma's side and pressed his muzzle against her hand, a silent thank you that required no words. The squirrels, as if understanding that their mission was complete, gave a final acrobatic display before disappearing back into the dense park vegetation. Emma had the strange feeling that they were waving goodbye, not just to the group, but especially to Max. "And now?" Mary asked, looking at the now free but clearly debilitated dog. Emma did not hesitate. "Now, we take him home," she replied, a note of finality in her voice. "Or better, we take him to Jack's aunt's clinic first, and then home." "Will your mother let him stay?" Peter questioned, always the voice of reason. Emma smiled confidently. "My mother understands the call of the heart. She'll understand this too." Jack nodded, already grabbing his cell phone. "I'll call my aunt and let her know we're on our way." "And what about our picnic?" Mary reminded, pointing to the basket and bucket still on the ground. Emma looked at Max, who now rested his head in her lap, his amber eyes half closed in an expression of pure trust. "I think we've gained a new picnic friend," she replied. "We just need to change location." And so the group reorganized their plans. The picnic would take place on the lawn in front of the veterinary clinic, while Max received the necessary care. It was an unexpected change, but none of them minded. For me, there was something in the journey of that morning that transcended plans and schedules. As they prepared to leave, Peter put into words what everyone felt. "You know, it's strange to think we came here just for a regular picnic, and now we're taking home a dog who was watching a family of squirrels." Emma smiled, stroking Max's head. "Sometimes the best stories start like this, with a glance at something no one else noticed." The walk to the veterinary clinic was slow. Max, though determined, was still weak after days of deprivation. Emma refused to let him walk alone, creating an improvised support with the picnic towel Jack had brought. Mary and Peter took turns helping to carry the dog's weight when he seemed more tired. During the journey, each shared their thoughts on what they had witnessed in the park. Mary talked about the incredible coordination of the squirrels, as if they were performing a rehearsed dance. Peter commented on Max's silent dignity, even in his abandonment. Jack reflected on how small acts of kindness could change the course of a life. Emma, however, kept her thoughts to herself. There was something in the connection between Max and the squirrels that touched a deep place in her soul. Something about finding beauty and hope, even in the darkest circumstances. The veterinary clinic was a modest building downtown, with a light blue facade and a stylized paw print. Jack's aunt, Dr. Vanessa, awaited them at the entrance, alerted by Jack's call. "So, this is our patient," she said, kneeling to examine Max as soon as they arrived. Her experienced eyes quickly assessed the dog's condition. "You were right, Emma. He's been abandoned for days. He's dehydrated and malnourished, but he doesn't seem to have any serious injuries." The veterinarian led Max inside the clinic, closely followed by Emma, who refused to leave the dog's side. The other three friends waited in the reception area, unpacking the picnic in the small garden in front of the office, as they had planned. Inside the clinic, Dr. Vanessa performed a full examination on Max. She administered fluids to rehydrate him, treated the areas damaged by the rope, and checked for an identification chip. There was none. He's young, probably around 1 or 2 years old, the veterinarian explained. His dull coat will improve with proper nutrition, and these rope marks will fade in a few weeks. Emma, who watched everything attentively, asked, "He'll be okay, right, Doctor?" Vanessa smiled, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Yes, Emma, thanks to you, another day in. The park, without water and food, and the story could have been different." Emma let out a sigh of relief, her eyes meeting Max's, who, even lying on the examination table, kept his gaze fixed on her, a look of absolute trust. "Now comes the hard part," continued the veterinarian. "We need to find a home for him." Emma lifted her chin, determined. "We've already found one. He'll come to my house." Dr. Vanessa smiled. "I figured you'd say that, but did you talk to your mother? Having a dog is a big responsibility." "I'll call her right now," Emma replied, already grabbing Jack's borrowed cell phone. The conversation with her mother was exactly as Emma had expected. There was surprise, some worried questions, but in the end, the answer was positive. "Bring him home. We'll talk about the details when you get back." With permission obtained, the initial treatment complete, and Max already showing signs of recovery, it was time to continue the journey. The picnic in the clinic's garden was brief but joyful, with Max receiving special portions recommended by Dr. Vanessa. The walk to Emma's home was lighter. Max, revitalized by the treatment, and food could walk on his own, though still slowly. There seemed to be a new brightness in his steps, a newfound confidence. The Santos family's residence was a simple but welcoming house, with a small front garden and a white fence. Emma's mother, Mrs. Beatrice, waited on the porch, her face a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. As the group approached, Max paused for a moment as if assessing the situation. Emma encouraged him with soft words, and he continued walking, his demeanor reflecting a regained dignity. "So this is the famous Max," Mrs. Beatrice said, descending the steps from the porch to greet them. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes studied the dog attentively. "He's special, Mom," Emma replied, emotion evident in her voice. "You should have seen how he looked at the squirrels, even being tied up and suffering." Mrs. Beatrice knelt down, extending her hand for Max to sniff. The dog approached cautiously, sniffed the offered fingers, and to everyone's surprise, gently licked the woman's hand. A smile softened Mrs. Beatrice's face. "Looks like he's already feeling at home," she commented. Emma's friend said their goodbyes, promising to return the next day to see how Max was adapting. Jack ensured that his aunt would visit for a veterinary follow-up, and Mary offered to bring some toys from her own dog. As the afternoon progressed, Emma showed Max every corner of her new home: the backyard where he could run, the corner, on the porch where a bed was being prepared, the kitchen from where his food would come. The dog followed every step of the girl, as if fearing she might disappear if he blinked. That night, against all previously established rules, Mrs. Beatrice allowed Max to sleep in Emma's room. "Just for tonight," she said, but her tone suggested that many exceptions would follow. Emma prepared a comfortable spot next to her bed with soft blankets and an old pillow. Max, however, seemed uncertain, looking at the prepared space and then at Emma, as if asking permission for something more. "All right, buddy," Emma whispered, patting the edge of her own bed. "Just for today." Max carefully climbed up, settling at the foot of the bed, his eyes, now brighter and more alive, fixed on Emma with an expression that transcended gratitude. It was deeper, more complex, something close to devotion. Before falling asleep, Emma reflected on the extraordinary events of that day, how a simple picnic in the park had turned into a rescue mission, how a dog tied to a tree had shown her a vision of the world that many adults never understood, the ability to find joy even in the darkest moments. "You know, Max," she whispered in the darkness of the room, "I think it was you who rescued me today, not the other way around." In the following weeks, visible changes came to Max. His fur regained its golden shine, his eyes became lively, and his body, once thin, regained the healthy form typical of a young Labrador. The rope marks around his neck gradually disappeared, as did the external signs of his abandonment. But the deeper transformations happened inside, both in Max and in those around him. Emma developed a sense of responsibility that surprised her parents, waking up early to take care of Max before school, saving her allowance to buy special treats, and dedicating hours to training him with infinite patience. Mrs. Beatrice, initially reluctant, became a passionate advocate for the dog. "He brought something special to this home," she commented to her friends, watching how Max followed her into the kitchen while she prepared dinner, as if offering silent companionship. Mr. Santos, Emma's father, found in Max a companion for his morning walks. "I never thought I'd talk so much to a dog," he confessed to his wife, laughing at himself. "But he seems to really understand." Max's story spread through the neighborhood, then to Emma's school, and eventually throughout the small town. He became a symbol of hope and perseverance. The dog who, even tied up, found beauty in the world through the dancing squirrels. Emma and her friends returned to the park several times, always with Max. The dog, now confident and healthy, ran freely across the lawns but inevitably returned to the old mango tree where he had been tied up. There, he would sit patiently, looking at the bushes, as if waiting for a reunion, and sometimes, when luck smiled, the squirrels would appear. Never as close as that first magical day, but visible enough for Max to wag his tail vigorously, his eyes shining with a joy that made Emma smile through her tears. "I think they were your friends during those lonely days," she said, stroking Max's head as they watched together the small acrobats of nature. "They kept your hope alive when you needed it most." As the months passed, Max became a constant presence at community events. Emma enrolled him in a therapy dog program, and together they visited the local nursing home, where the elderly lit up with his presence. "There's something in his eyes," Mrs. Gertrude, a 92-year-old lady, said, "as if he understands our loneliness." On the first anniversary of the rescue, Emma organized a special celebration in the park. Friends, family, and even strangers touched by the story appeared with gifts for Max and donations for the newly created animal shelter in the city, inspired by the journey of the Golden Labrador. During the party, while everyone ate and chatted animatedly, Emma noticed Max had wandered away. She found him sitting under the mango tree looking at the now familiar bushes. She sat beside him, in respectful silence. "You changed my life, you know," she finally whispered, hugging the strong neck of the dog. "Taught me to see beauty where others only see sadness." Max turned to her, his amber eyes reflecting a wisdom that transcended species. And as if the universe wanted to celebrate that moment, the bushes gently rustled. A small family of squirrels emerged, their graceful movements immediately capturing Max's attention. Emma smiled, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. In that moment, she understood a profound truth she would carry for the rest of her life. Sometimes we need to look beyond our own pain to find hope. Sometimes salvation comes not from grand gestures, but from small beauties that remind us the world is still worth it. Max, the dog who had been tied up and abandoned, had become much more than a pet. He was a teacher, a symbol, a living reminder that even in the darkest circumstances, there is always something wonderful to observe, if we just have the courage to look. And as the squirrels danced their eternal dance and Max watched with eyes bright with joy, Emma knew that some bonds, though invisible, bind us forever, not with ropes of pain, but with ties of love that transform not only those who are rescued, but especially those who have the courage to reach out and say, "I'm here. You are no longer alone."